Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another season of the Truth Podcast. This is season 2, you guys, and I've been so excited to tell you guys this. I've been so excited for this moment to expose, to reveal this new season that is about to come. And I cannot believe that I have made it this far. I have missed you guys. Literally, this 2025 has been a little bit empty. I have been feeling a little bit, something has been missing, and I believe that it is because I have not been making podcast episodes. I feel like something was missing because I have been missing your comments. I've been missing your interactions with my videos, with my topics, and you guys, I have missed you. When I tell you I have, I have. Because you guys are the biggest blessings, some of the biggest blessings God has given to me. And I'm so grateful that I get to share the gospel with you guys, to share the truth with you guys. And if you are new to my channel, if you are new to my podcast, then I just want to say, hi, my name is Sarah Carlson, and I am the host of the Truth Podcast, which is a podcast I created to uncover the truth. For in a world full of lies, in a world full of distractions, the truth is so difficult to find. And therefore, I'm here to reveal that to you. And who is the truth? What is the truth? Is God. So this podcast I have created to not just uncover the truth, but to inspire people to live for something, not just something actually, for someone greater than themselves. And so here we dive into scripture, we dive into Bible stories, and we connect it to our daily lives. Because this Bible, the Word of God, wasn't just written for people thousands of years ago to relate to, for people centuries ago to relate to. This was created for you to relate to. It was created as a love letter from God to you. And I really want you to understand that through this podcast I have created. Season 1, it was great. It was amazing. It was something new to me. But this season, is gonna be something else. I'm telling you guys. So don't you dare leave yet, because we have so much to go through together with God by our sides. So understand that God is alive, God is present, and God is in the moment here for you, so you can speak to him and so he can speak to you. But you need to be willing to open the word and to put it into action. You need to be willing for God to move in your life. As Revelations 3 verse 20 says, "Behold, I stand at the door and knock. If anyone hears my voice and opens the door, I will come into him and dine with him, and he with me." If you open the door for him, he will change your life. If you hear his voice, he will change everything around you. And he will dine with you. He will spend his time with you. If you take the action, for he is waiting. He's willing, but are you willing? And if you want this year to be different from every other year you have been living, you need to listen to God's voice. Why? Because he's the one who holds the blessings. He's the one who holds the plans, the amazing purpose that he has for you. He's the one who has everything in store for you that you need. And that is what today's episode is going to be all about. Season 2, episode 1 is going to be about how you need to hear God's voice and how you can hear God's voice. Make sure you stick until the end, for we're going to open some amazing aspects of this topic, okay? So let's get into it. Let's dive into this together. So let me talk a little bit about the power of hearing God's voice, because the more you connect with his voice, the clearer it becomes. You'll begin to recognize and to separate it from all the other noises that is trying to take your attention. And think about it. There is a lot of noises that is in our mind, in our lives, every single day, every single second, in your mind, your heart, your emotions, from the opinions of your friends, to the opinion of your coworkers, to the opinion of your family. These noises from the world around us, from all the things we choose to focus on, honestly, from society, all these noises are trying to block your ears and your heart from hearing God's voice. These are the noises that are trying to influence you every single second of your life. But here is the truth: if you continue to focus on these other noises, instead of listening to the real voice, the one and only voice you need, then you will begin to feel lost. You will begin to be lost. You will start to doubt. You will start to overthink, and eventually you will self-destruct. It's not any good for you to listen to all of this noise. Let's be real here. All these opinions, all of these thoughts, all of this everything, it's not all necessary. It's not all here to benefit us, is it? It's like you're being pulled to 100 billion different directions and you don't know which one leads to peace. For there is so much going on. All of these noises that you focus on, too many noises are gonna make you just confused and lost. And so this makes me come to the big question of today. Does God and His voice have a home in you? Does God's voice have a home in your heart? And think about that question for a second. What does that mean? What does it mean that God has a home in you? That God has a place to stay in you? A place where He feels like He belongs? A place where He feels like He is welcome? Does God have that place in you? But understand this: God, He lives in you. He is in you. He lives in you. He is present in your being. But that doesn't mean that He necessarily has a place, that He has a home where He is welcomed. As I said, a home is where somebody feels welcome. It's where somebody is taken care of. It's where somebody feels honored. And if God's voice has a home in you, then you're constantly inviting Him to you, to speak to you, to talk to you. You know, that's the same thing. Hold on. To speak to you, to guide you, to lead you. But for many people, God, He just lives in them. He doesn't have a home. He lives in them, yet He is homeless because they don't seek Him. They don't welcome Him. They don't talk to Him. They ignore Him like He's not there, but He is. He is right there, okay? He is not far away. The moment you turn around, you will see Him right behind you. He never left. He has always been there, but He is homeless in you. He doesn't matter to you. He's just another guy walking down the street, with no place to go. And they wander in other directions, not knowing where to find peace, because they didn't really give God the chance to show and to prove that He is the peace that they need. Don't be that person, please. So you need to ask yourself, does God have a home in me? God's voice have a home in me? Or does all the other noise just drown that voice of Him, of His? Ask yourself that. And I remember hearing this story that pretty much aligns with what I'm just saying, about a man and his friend who was going home. They were going home because they had been on some kind of trip to see somebody, and they were going home and they were taking an airplane home. But their pastor was there and told them that, hey, I got a private plane. I got a private jet. Or maybe not a jet, but a private plane, okay? And I can take you home for free, and you can save that plane ticket for later. He was literally just being generous and everything. He was like, you guys, I'm giving you a favor. And so they couldn't really resist. They couldn't ignore it because, hello, it's their pastor. So they said, okay, fine. We're going to join you. We're going to take the plane home in your plane. And so they did. 5 minutes goes by. They're going up to the sky, climbing up, and things are going pretty fine for the 4 or 5 minutes going. And all of a sudden, they're starting to get higher. They're starting to climb even higher. And the pastor, who is the pilot, says, guys, I cannot fly a plane when it's cloudy outside. Mark my words, it was cloudy, okay? It was being cloudy all day. And he just said that when they were in the sky, in the clouds, he was telling them, guys, I cannot fly a plane when it's cloudy. Sorry. That's not my thing. Like literally in the middle of the sky. And they were speechless. Okay. If I was them, I would also be like, why did you take me on this trip if you cannot fly the plane? And they all just start to get a bit like confused and be like, what? What? Okay, let me be real. What? And all of a sudden, maybe a few minutes goes by and the pilot, the pastor, he passes out. He passes out. Okay? In the plane. Oh man. And you know what the guys started to do? The man and his friend? They start to put on the radio, start to try to get in touch with other people flying the plane, or people who maybe like a control center where they help people for emergencies. They were trying, like, being hello into the radio, trying to ask for help. And so all of a sudden somebody answers and they get in touch with somebody who can help them, finally. And they tell him that you're flying into the wrong direction. You're flying into a direction that is leading you to somewhere totally else from where you're supposed to go. And so the voice that was through the radio talking to them was saying, now, if you want to get home, if you guys want to get home, then you need to listen to my voice. Now, it's going to be a pretty rough ride, he says. It's going to be a rough ride. There's going to be a little storm, but you need to listen to my voice. Do not focus on the storm. Listen to my voice. They were listening to this man's voice who is like in this emergency room for people who are struggling, people in the sky who are struggling. And he was just telling them, listen to my voice. Focus on my voice. Don't focus on anything else. Don't focus on the storm. Don't focus on the other people on the radio, because, you know, a radio connects to many other people, many other radios. Don't focus on them. Focus on my voice. Focus on my voice. Continually tells them. And he continues to tell them that many people who are in this situation, they ignore what I'm saying. They don't listen to what I have to say. They don't listen to the voice. And you know what they do? They self-destruct. You know what they do? They kill themselves. So listen to my voice and nothing else. And they did. They listened. The pilot was still passed out after like an hour of flying and listening to the voice, not focusing on anything else. All he was focusing on was, you know, steering the plane wheel. Does it have a wheel? I don't know. But they made it. They landed the plane. They made it safely. And they met, actually, the person, the emergency helper. And he shared the story, and he was like thanking him for the fact that they listened, for the fact that they didn't look at the storm, for the fact that they didn't ignore the voice and focus on the noise. And I bet they thanked him back, because I don't think they would have been alive if it wasn't for that guy. And I feel like you know where I'm going with this story. God, he had to make the pilot go into a deep sleep, because honestly, if I remember the story correctly, the pilot didn't wake up until they were on the ground again, until they had landed. That's what's so hilarious about this. He wasn't even like there for the whole action. He wasn't conscious. God had to literally make this pilot go into a deep sleep for these men, for the man and his friend, to understand what it truly means to trust God and his voice and to surrender to his voice. God literally put them in a life or death situation to teach them this. This is how their trip succeeded, by listening to the voice. That was the only way they could make it back home. That was the only way they could have succeeded. And this is why you guys need to surrender it all to God this year, so that your trip can succeed, so that your journey can succeed to wherever you are meant to go, to whatever plan God has for you. You need to follow his voice to succeed on your journey. And you better learn this now before God puts you in a life or death situation. Because I don't think you want that. I don't think so. So surrender it all to God this year. Surrender to his voice this year. For this is not only how you're going to succeed, but this is how every single person in the Bible succeeded. Honestly, let's reflect on that for a second. All the people who succeeded in the Bible had one thing in common, and that was that they listened to God's voice when he was speaking. In the moment they just chose to not listen to God, they failed. Immediately, they failed. Let's look at Moses. In the time where he listened to God, when he was sent to Egypt to save the Israelites, things were going well because he listened to God's voice. When he crossed the Red Sea, things were going well because he listened to God's voice. Because he listened to God's voice, he succeeded in all that he wanted to do, in all that God called him to do. But another time where he chose to not listen to the voice and instead to the noise, things were going downhill. Okay? For in the wilderness, when the Israelites and Moses, they were desperate to find water. I mean, they were in the wilderness. God gave him clear instructions on what to do, but because he listened to the noise of the desperate Israelites, of the desperation of the Israelites, the noise confused him, and he stopped listening to the voice. And in this situation, you can see that the noise is the desperation of the Israelites, is the crying, the screaming, the complaining of the Israelites, the people around him. It stressed him, it confused him, and it made him fail because he focused on the noise instead of the voice. Or let's look at David. When he listened to God's voice, he defeated Goliath, he became the king of the Israelites, he conquered all of his enemies. But the moment he started to focus on the noise, the moment he slept with Bathsheba, it all went wrong. He failed. His career? No, it wasn't on the top no more. And in this case, you can see that the noise, it was the lust. It was the lust inside of him that made him ignore the voice. So we can see here that in different situations, the noise around us can be different depending on whatever you're focusing on, whatever you prioritize, whatever is around you in your life. And it can get so noisy, guys, so noisy that you can fall out of your track immediately. Just like David did, just like Moses did, you can fall out of your track the moment you listen to the noises. And this is why you need to separate God's voice from the noise. I like how this rhymes. Now, what noises am I talking about? It can be the things you're focusing on, the things you're struggling with. It can be your family, your friends. It can be your anxiety. It can be your stress. It can be your addiction. And so here comes the big question. How do we hear his voice? When it's so noisy out here, how do we hear him? We got so much going on in our lives, sometimes we don't even recognize or notice when God is speaking. But let me ask you this, and I feel like this is a good example. If you are in a crowded room, maybe in a store, or at a concert, or just a public space with a lot of people and it's very crowded, if your mother calls your name, let me ask you, would you recognize her voice? And if so, if you said yes to that question, like if your mother's like Sarah or Michael or Kayla, like if your mother calls you that way, will you recognize her voice and immediately know that it is her? If so, why? Why would you recognize her voice? And I believe that your answer is because you know her. Of course, because I know her, because I've lived most of my life with her. I mean, if you're grown up, you're probably like, don't even live there. But for me, I've lived my whole life with my mother. So of course, if my mom shouts my name, I'm going to answer. I will recognize it immediately. So the reason I recognize my mom's voice, the reason I know her voice from every kind of place, every kind of area, it is because I spent so much time with her that it's glued to my brain. Even by the way she says it, it's like, sad, Sarah. I will immediately know because she has her special way of saying my name. So this amount of time that I've spent connecting with her, building this chemistry, building this relationship, I immediately know 100% that when she calls me, it is her. In a crowded room, I can like separate her voice from every other noise. You see what I did there? The rhyming here. The rhyming. Okay. And that is exactly where you need to start with God to be able to hear his voice. You need to spend so much time with God that you're gonna separate his voice so well when you're in a crowded room filled with noise. So tip number 1, spend time with God. You say that you cannot hear his voice when he speaks, but let me ask you this. Do you even let him finish speaking? Not so long ago, I made this video about how, when you got these friends who constantly interrupt you when you try to talk. We all have had those friends that just interrupts us in mid-sentence, okay? And it's so annoying. I'm gonna tell you, I get pissed. I get so pissed when they do that. And just like that, don't you think God thinks it's annoying when you do the same to him when he speaks to you? For trust me, you interrupt him a lot. I have interrupted God a lot of the times that he has spoken to me. How do we interrupt him? By the noise around us, by the friends, the gossip, maybe the secular music you're listening to, maybe the entertainment, all the movies you keep on consuming. Guys, when it comes to movies, I love movies. So that's so hard to I feel so convicted when I say movies because that is something I truly gotta stop consuming more than God. So all of this noise, yeah, okay, that was a noise that I was talking about. I gotta cut that noise out after watching Cars 3. But all of this noise is hindering you from listening to God's voice. And so how can you stop this? How can you stop consuming all of these things? The first thing you need to do is to stop feeding your flesh and start feeding your soul. How do you feed your soul? All the things I mentioned was about feeding the flesh, the gossip, the entertainment, the secular music. How do you feed your soul? Well, the first thing you need to understand is that feeding your soul is about doing things that are spiritual, like praying, like fasting, reading your Bible, being generous, giving to those in need, forgive, love, just being Christ-like in the things you do daily. That is how you feed your soul. This is how you can amplify, turn up the volume of God's voice and put on some noise canceling, canceling the noise, put on some noise canceling on those headphones. That is how you can spend more time with him. That is how you will grow spiritually. And I just want you to understand one thing very clear, okay? You need to listen to me on this one. It is not about having time for God. It is about making time for God. You cannot just wait for the perfect moment to arrive on your door. You cannot wait for time to knock on your door and be like, hey, by the way, God is waiting. This is the perfect time to do it. This is the perfect time to read your Bible, perfect time to pray, perfect time to worship, perfect time to listen to gospel music. Time is never going to do that. Time is never going to knock on your door and tell you to do something that is good for your soul. You need to make time. Make time. You're the one who chooses to do things. You're the one who chooses to spend your time feeding your flesh. So why don't you spend your time feeding your soul? You got no excuse, okay? And understand that you can make time in everything you do. In everything you do, you can make time for God. When you cook dinner in your kitchen, you can make time for God by praying, maybe listening to a Christian podcast, the Truth Podcast. Hey, just a recommendation. Just listen to my podcast when you're cooking. Or you can, for example, listen to gospel music when you're working out. That is another time where you can just start to worship God in the middle of the gym. You get it? It's about making time, not having time. Because if you wait till you have time, you will never have it. That is something you make. Think about that. Now, the second tip I have for you guys. Because I got 3 things to tell you. Second tip is to understand what God's voice sounds like. In John 10, verse 27 says, my sheep hear my voice, and I know them, and they follow me. You know God's voice. You have heard God's voice before. You know what it sounds like. You have heard God's voice in your life at some point. And I can prove that to you. When you were about to click on that shady website, and you heard that voice telling you, don't watch it. Who do you think that voice was? When you saw somebody in need, and that thought came to you to go and help them out, who do you think planted that thought in you? When you felt the urge the other day to go up to that person and share the gospel, Who do you think called you to do so? The answer is God. God, God, and God. For it was definitely not the flesh. It was definitely not Satan who was telling you to do all of those good things. Let's make that clear. It was also not you, because you wanted to listen to your temptations when you clicked on that website. You didn't want to go out of your comfort zone to go and help that person or to share the gospel to that person. So who else was it? The only reason, the only person it could have been is God. You heard his voice right there and then. But did you notice it? Yeah. Or did you have too much noise around you? And understand that this doesn't only convict you, which I hope it is. It's convicting me. The moment I speak, the moment this comes out of my mouth, I feel convicted because I have been in your situation. I have ignored his noise. No, I have ignored his voice. I have been like you, ignoring when he tells me to do something. I understand what it's like, but we need to understand what his voice sounds like. So we will be more aware when he speaks. So here are some things that you can note down to understand what it sounds like. First of all, his voice will never be the loudest in the crowd. His voice is actually kind of soft, it is gentle. Also, his voice enlightens you. He makes his message pretty clear when he speaks. He doesn't confuse you. God's voice convicts you. He makes you understand when you're about to do a sin, when you're about to do something that isn't really right with him. God, he speaks out of love, and he is always on time when he speaks. He's never too late. His plans are always good for you. And if that voice inside of you does not sound like any of this, I'm going to tell you that it is not God. It is not God speaking. And you need to make that clear in your heart that God, these are his, characteristics when he speaks. If that voice inside of you doesn't sound like that, that's the wrong one. That is so the wrong one. In story time, actually, one time I was at the gym and I heard God's voice in this moment. I want to share this story with you because it is actually kind of powerful. I was working out and I saw this group of middle-aged women who were really fit. Like, I was so happy for them, how healthy their body was, how fit they were looking. I was like, I want to look like that when I get older, okay? But I noticed one thing. One thing just came to me. And I saw that they were drinking the energy drink Monster. Like, out of all I've heard about it, it's clear to me. And I know that it is a demonic drink. You don't want that in your body. If you drink Monster, please be aware that it is demonic in so many ways. Do your research. I have done mine. And so in the moment, I was thinking about that. And a small voice inside of me, a small thought came to me and said, go and warn them. Warn them about it. Warn them that what they're drinking is not healthy for them. It's not good for them. And here is where the noises came, the overthinking, the anxiety. I was out there and I was thinking to myself, what if I walk over and they will think I'm weird? What if I walk over and they're gonna give me a weird reaction or a weird answer or an annoyed answer? I was thinking of these what ifs, negative what ifs. And I was rebelling. I was fighting against myself, fighting against God's voice, fighting against what he called me to do, to go up and speak out about it. And so after 10 minutes, walking back and forth, considering if I should do it or not, I came to this one conclusion. If I was in their position, if I was drinking something demonic as that, something that is not healthy for me, both physically or spiritually, wouldn't I want anybody to tell me? Wouldn't I want somebody to warn me? And it was like, that was the last drop. I just went over and I told them about it. I told them, I was approaching them and I was like, hey, you guys look really fit. By the way, that drink over there is kind of dangerous. I maybe didn't do it perfectly, but I did it. Thank God I did it. And the peace I felt after that, of knowing that I listened to God's voice, though the noise was trying to overrun it. It just felt so much better. If I wouldn't have done it, I feel like I would just have this room of regret inside of me for the rest of the day. And actually, the other day, I saw them at the gym, and this was months after. So I saw them at the gym and I didn't see any Monster. Maybe Maybe that's a sign. Maybe they heard my thing. Maybe they heard and listened to what I said. Who knows? Maybe I warned them for something that could have hurt them. I knew that it was God speaking out of the way that he spoke. It was light, it was gentle, and it was very like in the back of my mind. It was like, warn them. It was just like, hey, go up to them, warn them. It's kind of like that. And lastly, and this is just going to be a quick wrap up, last tip I have for you is to understand how he speaks. For he speaks in many ways. Okay, he can speak through your friend, he can speak through your family, he can speak through your phone and your social media, that video you watched. He can speak through the Bible, obviously. He can speak through this video you're watching right now. He speaks in so many ways, but are you there to catch what he's saying? You gotta be aware, you gotta spend time with him so you can separate his voice when you're in places where it's maybe hard to notice. That is the only way you're gonna be able to make it out of 2025 successfully, okay? That is the biggest tip I have for you, and that is why I wanted to start this season with telling you to listen to God's voice, because the rest of the 11 months of this year is gonna go well if you do it, if you listen to him when he speaks. And yeah, if you want more tips, then go and check out my series. I actually made a series called Breaking the Silence on Instagram and TikTok. And it is a series about how you can improve your communication with the Lord in more ways. So if you want more tips about how you can let God speak, how you can hear him speak, go and watch that series I made. It was so fun to make. And I have some behind the scenes that I posted on my stories. It's so hilarious. If you listened all this way, then I just want to say thank you. Thank you so much for spending this time with me, going through this topic. I hope it learned you something. I hope it teaches you that, yeah, God's voice is the only thing that is going to help you to find your path, to follow his plan, to find your purpose. I hope you're going to join me on my next episode that will come every single Wednesday, you guys. My new release date of every episode will be on Wednesdays from now on. So thank you guys so much for joining me on today's topic. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share this with a friend or somebody you know is going to need this message. And then I'll see you next Wednesday. God bless you guys. Hey, I did it. I did it. I did it. God, glory be to God. You know what? We did it.